So I'm Brandon Wilkinson. I'm a regular guy, a truck driver. Let's go, Brandon. You all know what it means? So a little about me, just before we get into some issues. I'm someone who will always tell you exactly what I believe, what I feel, and what I think, what I'll fight for. My jacket here, Let's Go Brandon, right? I've caught flack for using Let's Go Brandon, but the thing is, I believe in Let's Go Brandon, and I will not pander to anyone ever. The people in here who know me know that. I say exactly what I think, and that is what I'll do when I'm in DC. So, a big part of my platform or what has helped me build my platform, my following, is that you can ask me a question. Let's say I know you want to hear A, but I believe the answer is C. I will look in your eyes and I'll tell you, I know what you want to hear is A, but I believe the answer is C, and I will have a discussion with you. And that created this level of trust with people believing what I have to say with every other issue, that people rally behind me. As a regular guy, a truck driver, entering into top-level politics, I now have the second largest political following on Facebook in the state of Missouri. I have blown up past Josh Hawley about a month ago, and I didn't have to spend $1 million in advertising to do it, like some of these other guys. And this all comes down to people love how bold and honest I am. They feel that they can trust what I say. And then I have a really strong platform. I have real solutions for problems. And, I'm me. And if you like me, you're going to love me in DC. So some important things to me first. I'm very pro-life, so today was just a glorious, glorious day. I was very pleased with what happened. So I'm sure all of you are also. Something I say is, that in 100 years, I wish it would be 10 years, but in 100 years, they're going to look back at us and they're going to call us barbarians for murdering our children. Come on, this is crazy. So today was a beautiful day. Sadly, it doesn't outlaw abortion. It pushes it back to the states, which is a good thing, 10th Amendment, So now it's the state's decision. So we have a handful of states that come out today and ban it. That's fantastic. I love that. So that's a big one. But now because of what happened, it's no longer a federal issue, and I'm running for federal politics. So another thing I'm big on is the Second Amendment. Well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The Founding Fathers did not ever intend for politicians and government officials or the government to be able to tell you what you could or could not own. Biden is always saying, well, you couldn't own a cannon. You can't own a cannon. Actually, you can own a cannon. You can go buy one right now without a background check. And our founders felt the same. It's documented that a few of our founding fathers had spoken on this, specifically Madison. He actually got a letter written to him asking him, hey, am I allowed to have a cannon? And his response was basically, well, yeah, why not? Our founding fathers believed that we should have what the military has. And if you read the Federalist Papers, the Anti-Federalist Papers, and a lot of our founding fathers' personal writings, you would know that. Then you see in the attacks from the left, they'll constantly say things like, the Second Amendment says regulate. Well, you have to understand that words change over time. I'm a constitutional originalist. I believe that the Constitution is set in stone. It is the foundation for the nation. And regardless of what those words mean now, it's about what they meant then. And regulated back then meant well-prepared, well-organized, well-trained, well-armed. So, I'm going to go with one that is going all around today. The left is just losing their mind today. Like, oh my God, the Supreme Court, they're banning, or which they're not banning, but they're pushing the abortions back to the states. Our constitutional right. Well, there was never a constitutional right for abortion. That was a bad ruling, and it sat for 49 years. Nowhere in the Constitution did it say anything about that. At the same time, they'll sit there and be like, oh my gosh, they ruled pro-2A stuff in the courts. That's actually in the Constitution. So, I don't get these liberals. Another important issue, and prior to about 2 years ago, the number one, what I believe was the biggest threat to our nation, was different. But then we saw some things happen. So the number one issue to me, and what I think is the biggest threat in our country right now, the biggest threat to America, is election integrity. The left can sit there and say, and the mainstream media can say, that it was the freest and fairest election of all time. No, it absolutely was not. There has been fraud proven all over the country. The media just doesn't report on it. You don't see it. Even setting that aside, let's say it was a perfect election and there was no fraud at all anywhere. If there's not trust in that institution, it means nothing. And right now we don't trust it because some very shady things happen. We saw count rooms where they walked up and they covered the windows with Bristol boards. Yeah, I'm sure nothing nefarious happened in there. They're in there committing fraud. That is exactly why I did that. Why else would they block the windows so no one else could see what's happening? Shutting down a stadium, saying, hey, we have a water main leak. We're going to shut down the counts. Then once everyone leaves, all of a sudden, they're counting. They're pulling out briefcases, suitcases with ballots over what actually turned out to be a toilet leaking. Come on. It doesn't take widespread voter fraud to turn a presidential election. It takes highly concentrated fraud in a couple counties, in a couple swing states, and you can turn a presidential election. It is that easy. So we need to secure our elections. We need to bring back trust and transparency in our elections. This is something we have to do, and we have to do it immediately. Our next Congress has to take action to secure elections, to bring back the trust. Because again, even if we have a perfect election, if we don't trust it, it doesn't mean anything. You will lose the country. So there's common sense things that the vast majority of Americans support, but politicians won't push because the left wants fraud. Where they say voter ID is racist, no. I understand where some voters and citizens might think that because they've been told that. And they're not spending the time to look at it, they just believe it because they were told. But any politician, any person who has been deep into politics, whether they're a politician or not, any pundit, anyone who says that voter ID is racist is a liar who is peddling lies because they support and want fraud, but it's because historically it has always happened dramatically more on one side, and that favors them. So we need to have voter ID. Another thing we need to do is we need to clean up the voter rolls. When someone dies, the coroner actually contacts the Social Security Administration to let them know. That way, if you're on Social Security, no more checks are coming out. Or if, you're close to it or whatever, whether it's 50 years away, they know you're dead, they're never going to pay you out, and they're never going to come after you for not paying your taxes or whatever, your Social Security tax. So why don't we have the coroner also contact the Secretary of State's office so they can remove you from the rolls?
Absolutely.
Whenever you move and you register in another state, and this was a big problem in 2020. Let's look at Georgia. In Georgia, there was, I think if I recall correctly, and it's been a little while, so don't hold me to these numbers, guys, but it's going to be close. There was something like 50,000 people who cast votes in other states, but had ballots mailed out to them in Georgia. Now, that doesn't mean there was 50,000 cases of fraud in that instance, but whenever you move and you register let's say you move across state lines and you register from Georgia to Florida. When you register to vote in Florida, the Secretary of State down there, or where your registration with your election authority should be contacting your prior location to let them know so you're removed from the rolls. That's a very easy thing to do. It will not increase costs much at all, and it will help to bring back trust. I actually think there should be also an audit where with with the voter rolls of states, pretty much everywhere has more people on their rolls than they have citizens. So that's a problem, especially when you look at mail-in voting. I was talking to someone who I absolutely trust here about 3-4 weeks ago. He lives out in California, and he was reiterating to me about what he told me about back when it happened, that he actually lives in Simi Valley, and he received 2 ballots for the 2 prior people that lived in his house, and he's lived in that house for 6 years, and 2 ballots for the people that lived there before him. So he received 6 ballots in the mail, 1 for him and his wife, and then the 2 prior residents. So for each time. So that's a problem. We can't have mail-in voting. And I'm going to jump to something else because it plays into this. So I believe the greatest threat to our nation is Democrats. That might sound stupid, but let me give you an example, and all of you are going to agree. H.R. 1. One of my hobbies is reading bills and legislation. I love to do that. It's a passion of mine. It was part of my preparations for running for Congress. You're going to be a lawmaker, and you need to understand how to read, write, interpret, and apply law, right? Along with other things. So I started learning law and reading legislation, and it became something I really enjoyed. So I read these bills that are mind-numbing, 1,000 pages and so on. So H.R. 1 would have completely destroyed America. And the very first time the Democrats are in complete control of our Congress and our Senate and the presidency, they are going to pass something very similar to H.R. 1. Now, what does H.R. 1 do? I'm just going to hit the big ones. First, nationwide mail-in voting. Second, nationwide ballot harvesting. That is so ripe with fraud, it's ridiculous. It outlaws voter ID. It basically decriminalizes illegal immigrants voting. Same-day registration. You have an assigned polling place, but you can go anywhere. So I could walk into this polling place over here and say, hey, I don't know your first name, so I'm just going to make one up. I'm John Turner. And then I could go over here and say, and register here, and then vote on the same an hour later and say, hey, I'm Brandon Wilkinson. And I could go over there and register and say, hey, I'm Mark McCloskey. And there is no IDs. Not only is there no IDs, it outlaws them. So it would just create such levels of fraud in our elections. Another thing it did was, which is why I like to call it For the Politicians Act, because it was actually HR 1 for the People's Act, is it would also match small dollar donations 6-1. So any donation under $200 that you receive, you would get $6-1 from the government. So let's use someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. At this point, she's raised about $20 million in small dollar donations. So the government would then match that with $120 million. Now she has $140 million. How would you feel about your tax dollars going to politicians like that? What that would do is it would ensure that incumbents could not be beat by a member of their own party. It would ensure that every incumbent would hold their seat unless it went to the other party. So let's say her opponent did a great job and raised $3 million, because that's doing really good. Well, then he's got 21. She has 140. Is that a possible fight? No, it's done. So it would have done that. Further, it would have ensured that Democrats would have taken over the legislature, the Congress, and Senate in perpetuity forever. America will be destroyed. So we have to put things in place to prevent that kind of legislation from happening. And there are ways we can do that. When we look at where we're at in this nation, and some of you might disagree with me when I say this, but in 2 minutes, you're going to agree with me. We're at a point where this truly has become a battle between good and evil. It really has. That's not being hyperbolic. That's being real. All right? I'm a Christian conservative. I love my God. I love my family. I love my country. And what I see happening is evil. So you have one party that the politicians, so half the politicians in the country, they support evil. They support the murder of babies. Look at how they're reacting today. They support the mutilation of our children, the chemical castration of our children, and that's not an exaggeration. Lupron, one of the drugs used for transitioning kids, has been used historically to chemically castrate pedophiles. They don't just support it, they praise those things. They support lawlessness. They won't say the words, but we see what they do. They, Kamala Harris and all these people, they shouldn't stop. There's a few more there, but I think everyone at this point would agree this is evil. So we need good people to do stuff and to take action, or we're going to lose our nation. And when we lose it, there's no getting it back. There's nowhere else to go. This is the only bastion of freedom in this nation. People will say, politicians will say that there's a lot of free countries. No, there's actually only one. We're the only country that truly has free speech. We're the only country that has the right to bear arms. Those two things are what make us free. So, we look at things today where you have gun control passed. And I'll sit here and say that in those 80 pages, there was a few things that are good. And there's a whole lot of bad. I'm very disappointed, and I believe it was the 14 Republicans that crossed the lines.
15.
Was it 15? Okay, there we go. One of them, of course, Roy Blunt, Rhino, on the way out, of course. Yeah, boo him. Come on, guys. I want to hear it louder. What a joke. That guy has promised to protect our Second Amendment rights his whole career. And then when he's on his way out, support something like that? That's trash. So we need to get people in who we can trust. I may not be perfect, right? I'm a regular guy. I'm a roughneck, all right? I don't really care if I piss people off. I don't want to piss people off, but I just don't care. I'm fighting for my nation. I have a son. I want him to have freedom. I want him and the next generation. I want my nephews, my nieces, my friends' children. I want them to have more freedom than we had when we were growing up. And at the rate we're at, they're not going to have any. And we need people to get up and be loud and fight. Now, everyone here, you all know that there's a problem. That's why you're here. You see the problem. But we need to do a better job as conservatives. We need to do a better job as Republicans. We need to start talking to people. Education. That is how we can take this back. This is how we can take control. Now, we're going to take control in this election. Okay. But we need to take significant control. How do you do that? I read this book. I read a lot of books. But I read this book. It's called Turning Everyday Conversations into God Conversations. And when I finished it, I had this little epiphany, like, hey, this can easily be applied to politics. Now, I'm someone who's in politics, so it's really easy for me to go and talk to people. But it's something that, if you have trouble and you're not sure how, that's a great book. It's not very long. It's like $7 or something like that on Amazon. And just at points in the book, just think politics. And you'll realize how easy it really is. You need to start talking to your friends, talking to your family, talk to your coworkers if it's appropriate in a situation. if everyone out there who really sees a problem just would educate one person, it would be landslide elections from then on. So education, you can make a difference. Now, I wanted to stop at about 10 minutes and take 5 minutes of questions, but I went a little too long. So I want to go ahead and, because I think where people really learn the best or get the best feel for you is when they ask what matters to them. So I'm going to take a couple questions with the 2 minutes I have left. The gentleman in the back.
You speak well, you think well, you think the right things. And it's no small task to run in a district with 700,000 people against an incumbent. We admire you for that. I just want to know where you're from, how'd you grow up, what do you do for a living, who are the people that have affected your life and what you just that kind of stuff.
Sounds good. So one thing I'll point out, because it is a huge district, but I mentioned that I have the second largest political following in the state of Missouri. That actually is the point now of equating to about $14,000 in free advertisement every single weekend. It grows with my following. I'm from Cedar Hill, Missouri. I live in Cedar Hill, Missouri. I've spent about half my life in Franklin County and about half my life in Jefferson County. I currently live there in Jefferson. I'm a truck driver. I used to be a die-cast, before I was a truck driver, I was a die-cast setup man, worked on machinery, I'd break, I'd fix it, set it up, getting running new parts and so on. Very hands-on, mechanically inclined. But I always wanted to drive trucks. My grandpa was a truck driver. So it was something that I always, wanted to emulate, my grandpa. So as far as people that I respect or that have affected me, so my father was a very hardworking man. My mother didn't work, she was a stay-at-home mom. We grew up poor. I worked for everything I had, everything I have, just like my siblings did. I saw how hard he worked, working 70 hours a week, 80 hours a week to provide for us and just to try to make life a little better. So he's someone I have a whole lot of respect for. I really respect my Uncle David a lot too. He's a great man, and just like my father, he worked to come out of poverty and give his family a good life. As far as people outside of my life, I can't say his name because he's still teaching, but the person I most respect in this world who was not a family member, was a teacher of mine in school. I used to get picked on for being poor and fat, and when I became a freshman, in between 8th grade and freshman year, I started working out because I can't do anything about being poor and wearing all the same clothes all the time, but I can do something about being overweight. So I started working out. Well, then freshman year, now there's a weight room, so I'm in there every day after school, but I didn't know what I was doing. And if you know anything about working out, you can really hurt yourself and damage your muscles. And one of my teachers was one of the coaches. He was actually in there every day, and he saw it and came over and it's a really nice way. He's like, "Hey, Brandon, I can see you don't know what you're doing. You want me to teach you?" And then he worked out with me all year long until his specific sport came along and he had to coach. And that man has so dramatically affected my life. And I wish we had teachers like him in school. And one quick thing, because I think I'm out of time, is another issue is our schools, and it's a big issue in our state, in my district specifically. Surprising illegal immigration is like number 2 in my district. And I know up in this area it's a big issue. But the schools is something everywhere I go I get asked. CRT, we all know what that is, critical race theory. What most people don't know about is SEI, that's social emotional, or SEL, I'm sorry, social emotional learning. It's just as bad as CRT, they go hand in hand. There's a lot of commonality between them. And then there's another one called DEI, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it is just about, they're just going to keep changing these acronyms and changing the programs just a little bit to indoctrinate our children, telling our children that they're racist and other children that they're oppressed. We have to get this stuff out of our schools. We need to fight back to take back our schools. We need to take back the school boards. That's something I did to try to help some school board candidates. Mark McCloskey actually came out to one of the events to be a speaker and also help us promote a great school board candidate down in Arnold. So these are the things that we need to worry about, and we need to start working towards educating people on. Those issues I just talked about, those resonate with just about everyone. Even a lot of the liberals and Democrats you may know, especially Missouri Democrats, those are like California Republicans. These issues matter to them too. Educate them, talk to them. We can take back our country. Thank you, everyone.